Welcome back, folks. We are continuing our draft coverage for our Tennessee Titans and highlighting all the players that we could potentially be interested in. Another one is the next one, I should say, is a little bit of a wild card. Guy at the tight end position. We'll have to see. Oh, Jared's already shaking his finger. Let's get into it. Sammy, start me up.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Talking Titans.
Levis towards the end zone. Got a man. Touchdown. Wow. And it's the fourth TD pass of the day in the debut of Will Levis.
The sickest Tennessee Titans podcast. Sick! It's going to be sick.
We are back again with our draft analyst, Mr. John Vogel, who we appreciate joining us again. The next guy on our list is a bulldog, a tight end by the name of Brock Bowers, a guy I might also mention that has been very vocal over the past month plus about his potential desire to play football down in Nashville. That's got to throw a little wrench in this whole thing. Regardless, John, for a guy who is not as up on the film and what you're going to get out of Brock Bowers on your offense, can you describe to our viewers what you're going to find in Brock Bowers at the blocking, catching, everything that a tight end is going to do for you?
Yeah, so Bowers is a fun prospect because he's very different than what we normally talk about when we're talking about a tight end. He's a little bit on the smaller side. He's about 6'3", 240. And when he weighed in at 240, people were surprised. They were thinking it was being closer to 230, which he probably played at during the season at Georgia. Now, despite being a little bit smaller, he can still block. He can still do all those things. But you're not going to get your best, production value out of him if you ask him to come in here and play traditional tight end. You've got to come in here and you got to get him to, you got to get him to scheme him, to space, get him into open opportunities where he can kind of get out there and make people miss. That's where he was at his best, running the reverse action, running, late across the middle. Just get him schemed to space, kind of use him almost as a big slot, and you're going to be able to get really good production out of him from a receiving standpoint.
So, John, I've been very vocal on Titans Twitter about the possibility of drafting Brock Bowers. Moving back, we don't have a third-round draft pick this year, and we're going to get into a Snead pick. We don't have one next year as well. Rand Carthon, I've always said, is not going to go day 2 with one pick in this draft. So we talked about all offensive linemen. If the Titans have that ability to move back from 7 to 11 to 12 with Denver or the Vikings, I do see them personally taking Brock Bowers and go with more of a project, not really a project, because we said Patrick Pearl could be a potential starting left tackle for us in the second round. And you have one of the best offensive line coaches in Bill Callahan. So for me, I would love and be ecstatic if we traded back. I mean, I want the left tackle too, but we can get it in the second round. But to get a versatile piece in Brian Callahan's offense with Brock Bowers, motions. I mean, he's not that great getting off the ball, with man coverage. But when a tight end from Georgia puts up 2,600 yards and 26 touchdowns in 3 seasons and has been electric when he gets a ball in space, if you pair DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and you bump Treylon Burks to his natural position in the slot now, and then you have Brock Bowers too in the slot as the big slot. I mean, this is a scary offense. So, I mean, how do you see the Titans and Brock Bowers fitting together in that new offense and with Brian Callahan?
If you look at what the Bengals did last year with their tight ends, I think it would give you a really good idea of what they would ask, Brock Bowers to do, which they had, Irv Smith Jr., they had Tanner Hudson, they had, I know I'm forgetting one, Drew Sample. So they didn't have a lot of guys necessarily that you could work with that were your traditional tight end. So what they asked them to do was they asked them to play out of the slot mostly, which is exactly what you want Bowers to do. You don't want to run him in line as much. You want to get him matched up. You want to make him your matchup weapon. NFL is all about matchups, guys. When we're talking about one-on-ones and getting on the outside. With Bowers, the question becomes, do we cover him with the safety or do we cover him with a linebacker? Because the linebacker is going to be too slow, and in theory, the safety, depending on who it is, that's playing, is going to be too small. So you want to use him as your matchup weapon, and that's exactly what the Bengals did with their tight ends, getting opportunities, especially when Joe Burrow went down with the injury, and they needed more reliable pieces underneath, for Jake Browning to get the ball out faster, to have that opportunity. That's exactly what they did. So yeah, I think the fit makes sense. Bowers to the Titans would make a lot of sense, not just because you already have those weapons, but because you've got a younger quarterback who is still learning how to play the position, still learning, adjusting to the NFL speed. And when you're in that situation, you'll hear a lot of coaches and a lot of former general managers say this: a tight end is a young quarterback's best friend. And it's because of that opportunity, the opportunities it opens up underneath, especially when you got a guy that can stretch the seams. I'm not trying to be a Patriots homer here because I'm not a Patriots homer, but I watched that stinking documentary that Apple TV put out, The Dynasty. And if you go back, you remember when they had, and not trying to get off field stuff, but Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski, they didn't even really need the wide receivers on the outside at that.
No.
They didn't have great wide receivers on the outside because they had those two tight ends that could stretch the field, that could hit any point of it. And it just opened up opportunities for everybody to eat at that point, So that's kind of how I see, if you add Bowers, that's the type of weapon that you're going to get, is that we're going to get him into space, open up opportunities, stretch the field vertically, open up, Treylon running underneath, or Calvin running underneath, or Tajay out of the backfield as a check down. There's not going to be anybody within 10, 15 yards if we've got Bowers running a post or a corner out of the slot. Like, good luck.
You're convincing me now. You're convincing me.
Well, Shohei Ohtani, if you're listening, John Vogel said that the Titans would be a good fit for Brock Bowers, and he's currently at plus 750. So if you want to get a bet in on him, Mr. Ohtani, great value. But do you think if the Titans, because at least one of those tackles will probably be there at 7, whether it's Alt or Fashanu, assuming Brock Bowers is there as well, do you think, even though you said you believe it would be a good fit, do you think it'd be irresponsible for the Titans to pass up on one of these tackles in favor of Brock Bowers? And if you feel like we do get him, do you think, what is the likelihood we do it at 7, or do you think it's more likely we trade back? Like you said, we might not have to move back that far if someone wants to trade off for one of these tackles, one of these receivers. You think maybe we move back to 9, 10, 11 and hope we get him there? Because I really don't think he probably gets past 10 at the Jets. I think he'd be a great fit for them. So if we get him, do you think it's at 7, and do you think it'd be irresponsible to pass up on one of these tackles for him?
You have 3 priorities when you're building a team with what you prioritize over everything. And that's your first on the priority list is your quarterback.
Then protect.
Second on the list is your offensive line. And then third is your defensive line, because you have to protect the quarterback and then you have to affect the other quarterback. And those are the direct, position groups that directly affect the quarterback during the game. As great as Bowers is, as great as he would fit, I think if you don't have a plan to address the left tackle position, and you take Bowers, whether it's 7 or you move down, I don't think the Jets would take him at 10. And it's because I understand they just signed Tyron Smith to be their left tackle, but they need a left tackle too, or they need something, because Tyron Smith has played 14 games the last 3 years, and that's not that would be irresponsible of them to put Aaron Rodgers back there behind Tyron Smith, not knowing if he's going to be healthy this year. I think that I wouldn't say it's irresponsible, because I would understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to make up for the gap there at the left tackle by getting the defense to back off and force them to put more into coverage, or just taking the 5 yards, underneath when you get the ball out fast, as opposed to protecting the quarterback. So I think it just depends on what the philosophy is. You got to have a plan for left tackle, whether that's, hey, sign a veteran this year to vet minimum. There's a guy we like next year. I'm telling you, that Texas left tackle, Aaron Banks, is amazing. Like, he blew my mind when I was watching Christian Jones. That's beside the point. You might have a plan for next year where you're like, hey, we can probably get our hands on this guy next year, sign a veteran to a vet minimum deal, bring him in, let him play the year, then go get our left tackle next year. if you don't have a plan like that, yeah, it would not be smart to take a tight end over a tackle.
The one thing that has kind of turned me a little bit into thinking that it might be something I can get on board with. I love elite prospects out of the draft that have championship experience, and this guy's been a champion twice. So that's something I really like. I think that adds an extra element, a little bit extra of an edge to a guy because they know what that euphoric feeling is to be the best in the world at what you do. And some guys need to feel that in order to want the desire to feel that again. And he knows what it feels like. He's like I said, he's been national champion twice. So, I'm going to go to.
You just made a great point here, because it's not just that, but it's also when you have a program that is as dedicated to winning as Georgia is, that it creates an edge, in the way that you approach your job every day. And Brock has that. I mean, Georgia is brutal. Have you ever heard of Bloody Tuesdays?
I've not.
That's what the University of Georgia does. That's what it's called. Every Tuesday before a game is Bloody Tuesday, and it is the most physical practice of the week. And they get down and dirty at
That's
Georgia.
funny. That's funny you said that. You brought back memories because when in high school, my high school coach said Tuesday Bruise Day for us. So it was the same thing.
All right. Yeah. And so that's another edge that he does have where they've won 2 championships and they probably should have had an opportunity to play for a third this year.
Yeah. I'm going to go to sleep tonight probably in my mind thinking we're going to be sliding down to 12 and we're going to take Bowers. I'm going to be real thrilled about it. But
late night thought.
Yeah, that's it, man. It never changes. That's the great thing about this game, and that's why I love it so much, and it keeps my blood flowing. So that'll be concluding our little segment on Brock Bowers. We'll see how that shapes up, and we're going to be moving on. So, Sam, you know the drill. Send us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Talking Titans on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.